Welcome to another episode of the No Money But Dreams podcast. We haven't recorded in a while, and we thought today would be a great time to be back in the studio together, actually in the studio where we first recorded the first episode, and talk about how fundamental shifts in an industry can really destroy businesses. Mm-hmm. And you have come across this in your industry, and I've come across this in mine. And there's a number of lessons that can be taken away from it. And I think it's really important right now where AI is in everyone's mind, and 2023 has been occupied with AI. And you haven't really seen so many changes come through in businesses yet. And that presents an opportunity and a threat at the same time. So hopefully when you listen today to us discuss these, you can think about how this affects you in your job or in your business, and how you can take advantage of an opportunity that has been created now.
I also think that it's an important time to talk about it because more and more I'm speaking with friends, I'm speaking with relatives, and more people are thinking about how to create their own business and become entrepreneurs. I think since COVID, and since we moved from having to work in an office to kind of being able to work remotely, and now a lot of corporates and a lot of bigger organizations want people to work in the office again, a lot of people have been exposed to how they can use their specific knowledge to start their own business. And why is that important is because anybody who's thinking about starting their own business or leaving their corporate world or whatever, they need to be aware that, okay, maybe you start your business now, but if you want to have that security for 10 years or 15 years, then you need to be open to the idea that there could be a fundamental shift, and you need to constantly be thinking about, okay, is this a shift in my industry? How is it going to affect me? And what practices or what learnings am I taking under the belt to ensure that it doesn't stop me from being able to earn the amount of money that I need to live my life?
Yeah. So let's dive right into it. What was the fundamental shift that really affected your business?
I mean, definitely the key fundamental shift was COVID, right? I think when I started Burger28, the proportion of revenue, which was delivery, was it started at zero. I remember I would open every single store and I would not go on any delivery aggregators for at least 3 or 4 months because I didn't want to give any of the revenue back to them. You know what I mean? And also, as soon as a customer, and more now, everybody cares about convenience, right? You want fuel, you can get fuel in Dubai. You want to order something, you can have it within 10 minutes, you can have your groceries. You want food from any restaurant, it's the same thing. So it's a society which is built on convenience, right? Now, before COVID, the amount of people who demanded to have delivery at home was obviously not like it is today. So let's say it started at 15% of our revenue was delivery. COVID happened, obviously, for a short period of time, 100% of your revenue was delivery. And then when we came out of COVID, people were actually sick of being at home. People were sick of cooking and eating home food. So they were actually excited to leave the house, excited to come to a restaurant and order. Those times were phenomenal and fantastic. But as we tapered off and people started to go back into this new norm of how life is, delivery started to grow. And it's only grown incrementally. So it started at 15% of my business, and I think now it's around 75% of my business. So that was a massive fundamental change in many different aspects to Burger28. And it's actually made my business less profitable. Last year, in 2022, we paid the delivery aggregators $1.2 million. From our top line, which would otherwise, let's be frank, that's your bottom line, straight up, right? So how do you react to those changes? How do you look at your business model and adapt? I think is extremely important. And that's a fundamental shifts, and changes bring opportunities, but they also bring, situations which are to the detriment of you as a founder, as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And let's go back to when this was actually happening to you. I remember, at the beginning, you were trying to cut costs as much as possible to just try and survive, right?
Yeah. So the first thing, obviously, you want to do is you're like, I can remember vividly walking. I was actually, because you couldn't go to the gym. So I remember walking by the beach in Abu Dhabi, and I got a text message which said that you're going to have to close down completely, like no dine-in customers in Dubai especially, and it was going into lockdown for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And I was just like, shit, we're going to lose 75% of our revenue overnight. Yes, there's the opportunity to have delivery, but that is obviously a fundamental shift to your whole business. So you get extremely scared. So yes, cutting costs was the first thing to do. The second thing to do is how do we generate more revenue? And that was creating dark brands or creating different brands. So you could run multiple brands out of the same kitchen. Okay, that's more efficient. It's more optimized.
So that was the first opportunity that came out of this.
For sure, yeah.
People started looking a lot at how can I optimize the 24 hours that I have? How can I create more revenue? Even though my bottom line is going to be less, but how do I create more revenue to stay alive?
I mean, even at that point in time, you didn't even care about your bottom line, right? You just needed to stay alive. So how can I make more revenue? And as you said, you have all these fixed costs, right? You have your staff costs, which are fixed. You have your rent costs, which are fixed. To be honest, your electricity, water, all of that is pretty much fixed. Your etisalat is fixed, right? So you're thinking straight away, how do I generate more revenue? And the only real option then was to create more brands. So that's what we did. We created a donut brand, we created a sweet brand, we created an acai brand, and lately we created a breakfast brand. Now what's interesting about the breakfast brand is that you have all those fixed costs. How can you utilize your assets at times where they're offline? So in a burger joint, Burger 28, lunch, you have some orders, and then really at 7 o'clock, it really picks up. So if you can generate money from 9 in the morning or 8 in the morning, that allows you to, let's say, make 1,000 or 2,000 dirhams every single day for 30 days. You do the math, that's like 60K, you know, which covers a huge amount of your fixed costs. So then the rest of it just becomes profit. So looking at the assets that you have and how to optimize and use them more wisely was definitely an exercise that I think everybody in the restaurant industry after COVID had to think about.
Yeah. For me, it was a different type of shock that happened in my industry. 2016, basically the regulators came in financial services, regulators came in and said, we're going to change the rules that brokers have to play by. And they brought out a bunch of different measures. One of them was to restrict the leverage that people can get on trading accounts, which was a big change for brokers out there.
Can you just dive into what leverage is?
Leverage is basically when you buy a house, you put 10% or 20% down and the bank gives you the other 80%, right? In financial services, the same concept exists with a derivative where you can buy gold or you can buy shares or you can buy whatever asset with leverage in the same kind of way.
So meaning I can take let's say I have $100, I can take a position bigger than $100.
Yeah, exactly. $1,000 or even bigger than that.
And obviously the more leverage, the more profitable the business is for you guys, or the more users you can attract to the platform.
The more leveraged from a consumer perspective, the bigger your profits can be, or the quicker your profits can grow, and the quicker your losses can be, right? And the regulator wanted to kind of curb that. That was their idea of how to go about this. And this was 6-7 years ago. And when that happened, I remember being in a room here in Dubai, and we had all the senior execs from all around the world in the room. I was giving a presentation. The presentation stopped abruptly. The 6 senior leaders of the business left the room, went into a war room, and basically tried to strategize on how to deal with this, right? The thing that was very different in my industry to your industry was these changes were coming, they were being announced, and until every regulator around the world caught up to them and implemented the same changes, there was this vacuum of 2-3 years where there were regulatory arbitrage opportunities, which means, instead of having to direct customers to one location, you would direct them where it's better for the business, and that's how you would continue generating supernormal profits.
From location, you mean where your license is?
Yes.
So for example, you could cater to clients from a Bahamian license, let's say, because
instead
of the internet.
of directing them to a UK license or European license, you would go to Australia or to another offshore kind of jurisdiction. And slowly but surely, all of them caught up and the window kind of closed, right? In that time, it was very common for brokerages to apply for licenses all around the world to try and stay ahead of the game, right? Now, a couple years later, brokerages are looking at this again and saying, all these additional licenses that we have are actually very expensive to service. And is it still the right way of doing things? And I've seen some of our competitors give back licenses and focusing on the regions where they're really strong at and where they think is the best opportunity, right? So similarly to you, there was a shock to the system. Then there was this opportunity to arbitrage for a while, and that has kind of changed. And now, similar to you, it's been a couple of years, and you can look at it with hindsight bias, and you can say, okay, this was good, this wasn't so good, and now how do I react to it when this has become the new normal, right? And I think that's an interesting part in your business as well. Everyone has gone on delivery apps, right? Delivery apps take 25 to 35% of your sales, right? Which is massively harmful to your bottom line.
Well, it's pretty much all your profit, right?
Exactly. And you don't just want to be working for them. What do you do now to address this issue?
Exactly. I mean,
and you have the issue that consumers are now have fully changed their behavior and they just want to stay ordering food all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So it depends where you stand, right? As a QSR, which is a quick service restaurant, majority of your revenue is going to be delivery, because the overall experience of walking into a Burger 28, even though we try our best to have the best service and whatnot, it isn't that much more valuable than ordering at home, right? The problem is you're hungry, you want to eat a burger, whether you come from your house to the restaurant, that's way more friction. Sitting on your phone and tapping 4 times is much less friction. And overall, the value of getting full and eating the food you want is pretty much the same. I mean, we're all guilty of it. I order maybe 3 times a day on Deliveroo. You know what I mean? All the way from healthy food to non-healthy food. There's just such a wide choice there. And it's gotten to the point now that it's almost cheaper to order something on Deliveroo, because that restaurant gets to buy the chicken in bulk and all the individual things. Like I can order a plate which has chicken, has rice, has vegetables, if I had to do all of that at home myself, not only would it take so much time, which is, we know time is money and convenience, but also it would cost me more. So I think that consumer habits have changed, and in the QSR specifically, you had to adapt, right? A lot of people who are in fast casual, they don't have this issue. Like your Tasha's, yes, they have delivery, but a lot of people want to go and have a coffee. It's all day dining. They want to meet people. There's a vibe. There's an overall like value proposition beyond the food to go to these kinds of places. So coming away from that, you need to think of, okay, how am I gonna, like, what do I need to do with my business now? Now, we went from a situation where your EBITDA margin is around 45% to now your EBITDA margin is like 8 if you're lucky, 5 to 8%. So every single percentage you can save makes a massive difference. And you need to optimize everything. You need to optimize your staff. You need to really optimize your location. Like you don't need to have a location on a main street anymore. If you're behind and 75% of your revenue is delivery, no one really cares whether you're in the front or the back of the street, as long as the quality of the food is good and it was delivered on time. Secondly, you need to look at your supply chain. We use software like Suppi, for example, which allows us to, optimize our supply chain and make sure that we're getting the best prices from our suppliers. And in doing that, we can shave off like 2, 3, 4%, which goes directly to our bottom line. You also need to look at the utility of your staff. You know what I mean? One cool metric that I came up with or that I use is the revenue per staff. So let's say you make 100,000 and you have 10 staff. Each staff is generating you 10K, right? You need to see what that ratio works in your business, but you definitely need it to be more optimized. And I think you need to incentivize your staff more. They're not just cogs in a machine anymore. No, you need them to take ownership. You need them to want to go that extra mile for your customer, make sure that that order is on time. So all these things came into play, I guess, after COVID, and there's a positive side and a negative side. The positive side is that now I'm way more optimized. I'm way more efficient with the way I think. I've had to think out of the box and come up with other concepts to supplement the revenue. Well, it's not really supplement the revenue, it's supplement the cost that it goes to the aggregators, right? So let's say you broke even at 100K a month revenue before. Now you're gonna break even at 150, let's say, or 130, because they're taking 30 to 35% of your top line. You know, so all these factors come into play.
Would you, if you were to open another restaurant now, would you open it without delivery?
Honestly, yes. So a great example, we have a franchise in Fujairah, and he's not on delivery. He's only on car hop. It's a kiosk, so he doesn't have a dine-in component, but he's on car hop, and people who love the brand will be willing to come from their house for 10 minutes, go and eat the food in their car or take it home or send their driver, for example. So he's maybe not generating as much money as a branch which has delivery, but his EBITDA is healthier. And guess what? If you're generating 150K instead of 300K, you need less people, you consume less food, you consume less electricity, and all of that. So yes, I think so. And I think there's gonna be a shift by a lot of restaurant owners to see, like, why am I putting all this effort and all this time to make 8%? It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Margins of 5 to 8% make sense when you're importing containers of oil or containers of rice, or it takes me back to my days when I was importing apples in Nigeria. Fine. But you have so many moving parts. You have so many employees, so many lease contracts, so many suppliers, all of this. To make 8% doesn't make that much sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so that's one way to address the problem. Just open something and try and go back to where it was before and maybe make a little bit less money. But the other thing that I've seen in your industry is there's a new brand called Carry, right? Which very interestingly, I mean, at some point there was this trying to boycott Talabat and Deliveroo and all these different aggregators because they were just taking too much, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a new brand that has come out that has a different business model, which is a lot more friendly to the restaurant owner, where they still deliver your food. You can still order on an app, but it's much better for you. So tell us a little bit about this and how much you would love to work with them more.
So, I mean, look, this is the beauty of innovation, right? When something is broken or something doesn't work, then there's always an opportunity to find somebody who will find a solution. Now, Carry is an interesting concept because they charge you the first time the customer orders. So the first time that Tarek orders, let's say you pay 50 dirhams, which is, let's say your average order check, I'm going to take it easy with numbers, is 100 dirhams. That means the other aggregators would take 35. So the first time, yes, Carry takes more because they take 50 instead of 35. But for 1 year, every time that customer orders, you don't pay anything. So you have a customer acquisition cost, and then you own that customer for 1 year, and you own their data. So you can remarket to them, you can call them, you can email them. So I think that is a very interesting solution to the problem, because if you look at the value chain in the QSR industry, I mean, 35% of that money going to somebody else means that there's not enough money to reinvest. There's no retained earnings. There's no supernormal profits. So actually you have a bunch of maybe new entrants who come in, but the existing players, unless they've raised money from VCs or private equity, are not really interested to invest more money. Why would you want to invest when your return period at 8 to 10% is going to take you, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years with all the risk? I mean, I think it's 75 or 80% of restaurants shut down after 3 years. So the risk to reward ratio isn't there. I'll give you something interesting. I was sitting with somebody talking about purchasing Burger28 or investing or something. And he told me, it's really difficult to make investments these days in the F&B industry. He's like, I can get a corporate bond that pays me 7.5% with pretty much zero risk. Why would I want to open a restaurant which pays me 7 to 8% as well? The risk reward is not there, especially in these times where we have such high interest rates. I can put my money in the bank and get 5% with zero risk. you know? So I think that plays in, and I think it's only a matter of time where everybody kind of realizes that the value chain, it doesn't really work. It's kind of broken. So either people go off the delivery aggregators and they just focus on dine in and focus on car hop. If you love our brand, please, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, it's not worth our time. And I think that time will come, definitely. I mean, that's my opinion, at least. Because input costs are not getting any less.
Exactly. Costs have gone up at the same time.
All your food costs have gone up. Your packaging has gone up. Honestly, staff, I mean, their whole life has gone up, right? All their expenses are up, especially in Dubai. We've seen a bit of inflation because a lot of people have moved here. Rents have gone up and things like that. So by nature, all your costs are going to have to increase. So what, you're going to go from 8 to 5%? But why would you want to reinvest? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and then if you look at, what is happening now, I mean, it would be interesting to see in your industry how you look at, 2023 was all about AI. Lots of interesting stuff that has come out. But I also feel like some of the dust has settled and you don't hear it as much anymore. You see that a lot of new ChatGPT keeps advancing. And use cases keep popping up in different kind of parts of the industries. But what I still miss seeing is the implementation in businesses throughout industries, right? And I think 2024 will be one of the year where we can really see a lot more of these changes coming through and a lot more people feeling it, right? So I feel now in that time, at the end of 2023, a lot of people are thinking, I'm certainly thinking about, how is this impacting my industry and my job and the opportunities that can come out of this. We started this episode all about there's a shock and then people will go out of business and people will take advantage of this and become better businesses. And I think AI presents this opportunity as well. So where do you think that, AI presents that opportunities, especially for, tech businesses and just businesses that have an opportunity now to either cut costs, become more efficient, similar to what you have done, right? And then, but also create completely new business streams that can make them the 2.0 of what they were last year.
I mean, look, for me, I was thinking the other day of why not creating a whole menu on AI and calling the brand AI. You know what I mean? It's called AI Burger. And literally the menu changes every month and it's the AI that chooses exactly what the menu will be. So that's something that could be interesting, which is kind of leveraging the buzz around AI and give people something to be curious around. Now, in general,
what about looking at all the data of the aggregators, looking at what sells the most, right? And letting the AI figure out the perfect menu.
For sure, you could do that. You could let them scrape all the aggregators, and in doing that, they could pull out all the information and then make a menu. You could definitely do that. Another thing you can do is you can use AI to help you create content. With Midjourney and all these different visual AIs, you can create almost anything. I think it allows you to, if you were building a restaurant, you could visualize what the restaurant would look like with less of a touch point of an interior designer, for example. You could visualize it, you know what I mean, and then give it to a contractor. I think that AI is it's been a buzzword, it's a technology, but everything was a technology once, right? Electricity was a technology, oil was a technology. And AI will be a technology that has been harnessed or been integrated into business when it's not called AI anymore. It just is what it does. You know what I mean? And I think that time is coming. And I think 2024, more than anything, all these, language models, and there's a lot of startups which are looking at different problems and use cases to use this technology will emerge. And anyone who doesn't embrace it or figure out how to use it will fall behind, as it's a fundamental shift, right? And it will be the younger people who maybe understand it or are willing to take a bet. That bet right now might not pay off, but in 5 years, for sure it will, That's how I look at it. What about in your industry?
Yeah, for me, what is really interesting about fintechs is they have a lot of data, right? We sit on unbelievable amount of data. And with that data, closed kind of LLMs, if you look at ChatGPT and what you can now produce, especially using your own data and not making it publicly available, which is, I think, one of the things that made people hesitant at the beginning. If you can create your own LLM and use all that data to your advantage, you can really do stuff that other people can't do. Like I can think about risk management immediately. You can tailor your product a lot better. You can analyze what customers are doing, identify churn much quicker. There's so many different opportunities that you can do education in a much better way. You know, if you look at Duolingo and what Duolingo has done for teaching people languages, you could do this in finance as well, where you actually say, okay, Alex is at point X, we're gonna let him do Y, you know, and the next person is much lower, you know, doesn't have as much understanding and needs to have a completely different way. So I think personalization, which has been a dream before, is much more achievable now, because the cost of producing unique ways to learn is much easier now than without this technology, right? So there's so many different use cases, and I feel no one has taken advantage of this opportunity. I think a lot of people are building in the background, but nothing has been released yet that is really like, wow, this is the next way of how this industry is going to be shaped.
I mean, look, even at the end of the day, for example, having a personal assistant who can go through your emails, like I get, I don't know how many emails, and half of them are irrelevant. I could have an AI assistant who could go through my emails, tell me what's relevant. That saves me time. I could have an AI that could analyze all my sales data for the day and give me what I care about, you know, as it's learning from me what actually are the metrics that make sense. At the end of the day, it's allowing you to produce more work faster with less people, right? I mean, that's going to be the cost saving. And I do think that AI, and I mean, you look at NVIDIA stock, how it's just shot up. That's because there's demand for their product, right? There's more and more demand for computing power in order for people to save time, or for there to be this massive technological leap, or it's an efficiency or economic leap that AI will bring. And I think that, I mean, America is investing, China, all these countries are investing, but whoever manages to harness it the best is going to have a massive, I don't know, this will be like the next revolution, like the industrial revolution, or, you know, manufacturing, or the printing press, like all that. I think AI will allow that to take place, and we're not 100% sure yet in what form it will be, but it's definitely going to bring a lot of economic, a lot of economic improvement to everybody.
Yeah, I think everyone listening to this, wherever you work, or whatever business you want to start, or whatever business you have, has the opportunity to really play around and see all the different changes that are happening at the moment, and how to implement this in their industry or in their day-to-day. And it's not like, oh, I don't work in tech, or I don't work in the engineering department, I can't do this. Literally, like, that's the beauty of ChatGPT and all these different kind of tools. You can just pick it up like this, and you can have a normal conversation with the AI, and you can get to an outcome very, very, very quickly.
Definitely. And I think that for anybody who's starting their business, let's turn around to the original, like, whole point of this conversation, is that if you're starting a business, you need to be prepared that there will be fundamental shifts, right, in your industry. And you need to be able to identify them as fast as possible. And you need to come up with your next 5 moves, or your strategy, you know, of how are you going to mitigate this fundamental shift, hopefully embracing it. You know, I think a lot of people were a bit slow to embrace the aggregators. Obviously, if somebody comes in and becomes a partner in your business, right, the first reaction is, whoa, I don't want any more of this. But I think what I was good at was saying, okay, this is something that's going to happen in my industry, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to fight it, so I might as well embrace it straight away, which is what I did. I built strong relationships with the aggregators. I used all the marketing tools they have in order to gain market share on the aggregators. That's whether you're placing yourself on top, or doing discounts, or anything like that, in order to position myself now to reap the rewards, I guess you could say. So it's important. When you see a shift, you need to react to it, whether that's in a corporate world or in your own business. And if you don't react to it, you'll be left behind. And we all know that starting your own business, you don't have a guaranteed salary, right? You don't know how much money you're going to make every single month. So I think that should entice you or encourage you to always be thinking like 2 or 3, 4 steps ahead of what's going on in the market that you're operating in.
Yeah, my experience here is a lot of the time when something comes out, there's a lot of excitement and, with the shocks that we discussed. And some people will go in this direction and think this is, mainstream and everyone is doing this. I have to do this as well, right? And then when you think about it and you see certain things play out, there's new opportunities and different ways that come out of this that people at the beginning may have not thought about. And I feel the same thing is happening with AI, where everyone thought, creating co-pilots or stuff like that is the way to go, right? And every business became an AI business. Whereas now, the richness of the data that you have and the opportunity that creates is something that more and more people are realizing. And maybe we'll see a completely different shift in a different direction than what people thought about 12 months ago.
I mean, look at like health and wellness. Like, look at the Whoop. Like, there is some part of AI in there that's telling you, okay, your sleep was good, it wasn't good. Your workout should be, you can work out a lot harder today because you didn't have stress yesterday. Like, think of all the data that it's carrying, And when that is fed into an LLM, which can understand the data and then give you predictions. I mean, at the end of the day, this predicted that I got COVID. I told you that, right? It says you have a respiratory issue. Like, that's incredible, man. So as we get more connected with everything in our life, from our iPhone to our Whoop, to our iWatch, connected to our iPad, to our smart home, and all of that, I think AI will be around us almost in that scary way where in the movies where she's like sitting in the corner or something, you know what I mean? And it's gonna help us make better predictions about how to live our life, depending on how we want to live our life. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to be healthy, it can predict what to eat, could even order you the food. Like, imagine the Whoop app ordering you food based on your workout, right? You didn't work out that much today, no carbs for you, buddy. You worked really hard, there's carbs. Like, the options are endless, but it depends on the data. So I think that a lot of companies now have, in the beginning it was who could create a language model. Now we've figured out that everybody can do it. It's not that complicated. But the corpus of data that language model is learning off is what will be relevant to the it's a recommendation engine at the end, right? It's predictive and recommending. That'll be how valuable it is, So the more data that you have, the more value that you'll have, I guess, in the end.
Yeah. So I hope this was thought-provoking for some folks and people started thinking about, how can I do something with this shift that inevitably is coming to my industry. And we'll see what comes next.
We'll see you next time, guys. Thank you. Have a good day.